Hey patrons, so today I only have one little claim to address, but it's a pretty interesting one I think. It's a scientific miracle of Islam that I haven't heard before.
One of the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad said, "Ma min aamin amtar min aam." There is no year you will see more rain than another year.
Right, so as you said, this is not a claim from the Quran, it's from a hadith. Specifically, an obscure hadith from the book by Al-Hakim called Al-Mustadrak, which is regarded as poor in its authenticity and not very much used among Muslims. As a result of it not being a very important book of hadith, it's hard to find, especially in English translation, so I'm just going to take your word that this is what it actually says, which I know is a pretty foolish thing to do when dealing with Muslim apologetics, but it's alright. Your argument's going to fail miserably either way.
This in itself, you know how much studies have been put to prove that point?
None. I challenge you to find one single study meant to prove that there has never been a year with more rain than any other year.
What does it mean? Meaning that the amount of rain that falls in the earth, on all the land of the earth, it is exactly equal from one year to another. And they have proved that scientifically nowadays.
Alright, let's get into the good stuff. So this claim appears to have originated with Zakhlul El-Nagar, whose website claims that he's an earth sciences professor. Now, I'm pretty sure he's an earth sciences professor the same way Kent Hovind was a high school science teacher. You'll see why soon. Here's his article about the claim, which comes from his book Treasures of the Sunnah, and this is how I know which book of Hadith was being referred to at the start, because it cites it. And he also mentions that the hadith in question has been classified as weak by Islamic scholars, apparently because they thought it was scientifically inaccurate. Apparently he missed the memo that hadith are not classified based on scientific accuracy, or the whole whack of them and the Quran itself would have been tossed in the garbage can centuries ago. No, they're classified based on whether the hadith directly contradicts a previously accepted one, and whether the narrators are deemed trustworthy, and whether they have an idea of who told who, the original thing in the ridiculous game of telephone that these people consider good enough evidence to base their beliefs on. So if it's classified as weak, it's going to be because it doesn't match one of those criteria. So anyway, El-Nagar lists off a bunch of facts about the water on the earth. I'm being generous calling them facts because I haven't checked them, but quote-unquote facts. How much water's on the earth, where that water's located, so on and so on. And then he says, therefore, based on how much water's on the earth and so on, the rate of evaporation from surface water is estimated to be around 320,000 cubic kilometers of water per year, while the rate of water evaporating from the soil is estimated to be almost 60,000 cubic kilometers, totaling 380. Now, I have no idea how he thought that therefore was warranted, because he said absolutely nothing that would indicate how to calculate the amount of water that evaporates into the air. Just because you know the amount of water on Earth doesn't mean you know how much of it is going to evaporate in a year. There's no mention of temperature, no mention of saturation, nothing. Anyway, that's the place where the claim appears to come from. Just this assertion based on nothing by Zakhlul El-Nagar. Then after that he fillets Allah for a few paragraphs, and then he gets to this whopper of a fuck-up. The average amount of rain precipitating into the Earth's surface today amounts to 85.7 cubic centimeters per year. Wow, isn't it amazing that we can all survive despite there being so little rain? That's not even 1/10 of a liter, and the whole world has to share it. Incredible. And he follows that dose of delicious stupidity up with the claim that the amount of rain varies between 0 in the dry and arid desert areas, and 11.45 cubic meters of water precipitating into the Hawaiian Islands per year. Yeah, so even though the entire Earth only gets 85.7 cubic centimeters of precipitation in a year, that's 0.0000857 cubic meters, somehow Hawaii gets 11.45 entire cubic meters all to itself. That's an amazing destruction of the laws of physics and even basic math. It's a miracle! And all this despite his own page just previously claiming that 380,000 cubic kilometers of water evaporates each year. I wonder where it all goes. Seriously, who's writing this shit? A fucking 5-year-old? I mentioned this came from El-Nagar's book, and you might think, surely these are just typos by whoever transferred this article from the book to the website, right? Well no, I checked, it's actually there in the book. Unbelievable. By the way, I found the source of the claim about Hawaii's precipitation, and it comes from Planet Earth, Cosmology, Geology, and the Evolution of Life in the Environment by Cesare Emiliani. And of course, as you might have guessed, the real claim is that Hawaii gets annual precipitation of 11.45 meters, not cubic meters. That is a metric shit ton more than 11.45 cubic meters. But hey, what do I know? I'm just an idiot. Dr. El Nagar is an earth sciences professor, so he must know his stuff. Anyway, leaving that dumb sack of shit aside, let's talk about whether it really has been proven that the exact same amount of rain happens on Earth every single year for the last 1400 years. And to start with, some of you might be familiar with this newfangled term the kids are using these days called global warming. That's the increase in average temperature worldwide over time. Even the people who deny human causation of it usually accept the fact of it in and of itself. If not that it's happening especially fast right now, then at least that changes can and have happened based on a variety of factors like increased solar activity or whatever. Now, I have no idea if El Nagar or whoever the guy is I'm debunking believe in it, but I don't really care, because if they're going to place importance on what science has proven in order to support their weak-ass claims, then they get to accept the whole package of what science has proved, not just pick and choose bits of it. And that means global warming, and since I'm in the mood to be a dick about it, human evolution, are part of the package that they've subscribed to. Tough shit. So the most relevant factors in global annual precipitation are evaporation and how much water vapor the air can hold. As El Nagar points out himself, areas with higher temperature tend to have higher evaporation. So let's just open up this moisture calculator from NOAA, and we'll type in an air temperature of, say, 15 degrees. And with that, we get a saturation vapor pressure of 1,698 pascals. And now we'll type in 16 degrees to show the effect of 1 degree of global warming. Now we have a saturation pressure of 1,810 pascals. That's a very significant increase. It's almost 7% just for 1 degree of increased temperature. So warmer air holds more water vapor, quite a lot more, actually. And that means more evaporation can happen. Now, global average temperature has changed significantly over the past century, so this is not just hypothetical, it's actually happening. And that means El Nagar's claim that the total amount of the Earth's water evaporating into its gaseous atmosphere is fixed every year, and the total amount of water vapor contained in this layer is also constant throughout the year, is false. And the entire claim that the amount of rainfall will be constant every single year forever rests on that one single easily falsifiable and physically nonsensical claim. Because, as he states himself, the amount of precipitation depends on how much water evaporates in the first place, and so a change in the amount of evaporation requires a change in the amount of precipitation to balance it. And that's pretty much what we see. For example, here's a paper from the Journal of Geophysical Research, Atmospheres, which analyzes different models and observations to determine trends in global precipitation by year back through the 20th century and predicts them into the 21st century. In this paper, we take advantage of the global reconstructed precipitation data back to 1900 to quantify the global precipitation trend in the 20th century from observed data. The examination of the 20th century precipitation trends from models and observations suggests that global precipitation has increased, particularly over oceanic areas. Now, yes, it is kind of a roundabout method to figuring this out, and there's a very good reason for that. The reason why this paper compared different models and different sets of observations and showed the mean between different data sets, instead of people just putting out a rain gauge in a few places around the world and calling it a day, is that, as this recent review of data collection points out, getting precise data about precipitation is really fucking hard on a global scale. Here's a recent paper that examines exactly that problem. In this paper, we present a comprehensive review of the data sources and estimation methods of 30 currently available global precipitation datasets, including gauge-based, satellite-related, and reanalysis datasets. We analyzed the discrepancies between the datasets from daily to annual timescales and found large differences in both the magnitude and the variability of precipitation estimates. The magnitude of annual precipitation estimates over global land deviated by as much as 300 millimeters per year among the products. If you think about it, it makes sense. If I asked you to determine exactly how much rain falls on the entire Earth in the next year, how would you do that? One option would be to put a rain gauge in every city on the planet, or just grid it around the entire world, but that would still only tell you about the rainfall in the specific places where you put the gauges, and areas close by might have different amounts of rain. And also, the amount of rainfall in those areas you pick is going to change year over year, potentially pretty dramatically. Another option would be to launch a bunch of satellites, but while satellites are indeed very good, they still only produce indirect estimates which are pretty variable. You can do everything and combine every dataset you have from every data source you have and average it out, but that's still an estimate. You still don't know the exact amount of rainfall. So even if we exclude global warming from this argument, the assertion that scientists somehow know the exact amount of rainfall that happens every year is absurd to the point of idiocy. So my point with all of this is, if anything has been proved scientifically, it is not that the volume of rain is exactly equal from one year to another, but actually the exact opposite of that. That it's not exactly equal from one year to another. And since you've already accepted this hadith as a real statement of Muhammad, that means Muhammad was plainly and simply wrong.
They call it the volume of Earth annual precipitation.
That's a really interesting way to phrase that. I thought that didn't sound like a term that would be used that often, so I threw some quotes around it and plugged it into Google to see where you might be getting it from, and this is all I found. An article on a website called The Physics Factbook by one Vernon Wu. Probably this is where you came across the term. The main thing on this page is a collection of estimates of average global precipitation. And the first thing that should jump out at you, random Muslim guy, is that every one of these estimates is slightly different, which should be a clue to you about the fact that there's a serious problem with getting the exact amount of rainfall per year, and that no perfectly accurate figure exists. Which, once again, just goes to show that your claim that anyone has proved scientifically that the volume of annual precipitation is exactly the same every year holds no water. Another thing to note here is that these estimates disagree significantly with Al-Nagar's estimate. I don't mean the estimate of 85.7 cubic centimeters, which is just amazingly wrong. No, I mean the estimate of 284,000 cubic kilometers precipitating into the ocean and 96,000 onto land, which matches the 380,000 cubic kilometers he said evaporate in total. Funny side note, Al-Nagar conflates rain with precipitation, which anyone who's seen snow will know is not quite right. But we'll just pretend that Muhammad really meant all precipitation when he said rain, because it's not like we need to assume he was bright enough to know the difference. So his estimate was 380,000. This page has estimates of 536,000, 510,000, 573,000, 423,000, and 510,000 cubic kilometers. 423 isn't too far off 380, but the rest are way off of his estimate. And again, that's just more evidence of the difficulty of getting really good, accurate information on just how much water evaporates and precipitates in a year.
And they have collected all of the amount of rain that have fallen in Earth throughout the year, and is exactly equal to what happened this year or the next year.
No, obviously nobody has collected all of the amount of rain that's fallen on Earth in a year. But I guess what you mean is data on that amount, and again, estimates. Only estimates. But estimates, which when you compare them and average them, show a gradual increase in global precipitation over time, as necessitated by global warming.
How did Prophet Muhammad know that 1400 years ago? Unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have told him that.
He didn't. He was dead wrong. I've just shown you that. So now the options are to admit that Muhammad was just another fallible human being with incorrect beliefs like you, or to turn around and start denying the validity of the hadith that you've already insisted is true. My guess is you'll choose the latter.
This is indeed a miracle to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
So did Muhammad have any good miracles, or were they all like this?
And they have formulas that for instance takes in perspective how much water in the ocean, how much the amount of the rain that falls out of the cloud, how much rainfall that goes into the land.
They have formulas for that? Okay, well in that case, they also have formulas for how much water vapor the air can hold at a given temperature, which is going to tell you how much more water will evaporate into the air globally, and by extension precipitate out of it globally as the global average temperature increases, which has been happening for quite a while now. But you and Muhammad apparently didn't know about that little problem.
All of this is exactly equal from one year to another.
The only thing that's exactly equal from one year to another is the idiocy of Muslim apologists. Thanks for watching, patrons, and thank you very, very much for your support. I couldn't do it without you. Have a great month.